Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. The video that follows discusses the espionage charges against President Trump, or what has been classified as espionage charges against President Trump. I have been asked to make this by a viewer. I'm honoring the viewer's request. I am trying very hard to stay away from politics in this. This is not about the merit of President Trump as a former president or as a candidate. It is about a specific set of allegations that are made against him in the case that is on file in Florida. We're going to look first at the indictment as to what he is charged with. We're going to look at the statute that he's charged under. And then we'll talk about some of the defenses that have been posited to perhaps be a source of relief for him. Again, I'm taking no position on the relative merits of President Trump, and I don't want anybody to assume that I have a position in that regard, nor do I have a position on whether the government should have brought this case or whether it will succeed in this case. I am merely talking about the things that I have some information about and my view on some of these legal issues. So with that said, let's get into this. So this will be the third one in the Trump classified documents series. And this one looks at the espionage statute and the elements and all of that, and sort of wraps in all of the prior stuff so that we can understand a little bit better what the elements of the claims are that the government is making here. So let's start with a look at the indictment. So this is the indictment, and you see up here at the top, the first document is the Section 793E, and 18 U.S.C. Section 793E. That's what Trump and Nauta and Oliveira are accused of violating. But when you get down here into the actual gist of the indictment, here are the things that are actually charged. They give you a lot of history and a lot of fluff, but not a lot of real information. Now, this is the willful retention of national defense information. It's 18 U.S.C. Section 793E. We'll look at that in just a moment. The general allegations are included on or about the dates set forth in the table below in Palm Beach County in the Southern District of Florida. Donald Trump, having unauthorized possession and access to and control over documents relating to national defense, did willfully retain them. And then it gives 32 different documents that he retained. And this indictment applies only to Trump. It does not apply to Walt Nauta or Oliveira. So this is the 32 most serious charges here are this willful retention of national information, defense information, and the assertion, particularly in the media, is that this is essentially an espionage crime or an espionage charge, which is not in fact the case. And that's because espionage is the practice of spying or using spies to get information, typically done by governments. Governments engage in espionage, and to be charged with espionage, you pretty much have to be working for or with another government. This is instead retention of national defense information that should have been left where it was at the White House. So this is what Section 793E says. Whoever having unauthorized possession of, access to, or control over any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic negative, blueprint, plan, map, model, instrument, appliance, or note relating to the national defense or information relating to the national defense, which information the possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of any foreign nation, willfully communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, or attempts to communicate, deliver, transmit, or cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted the same to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it, oh man, what a run-on sentence, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. So from this giant run-on sentence that we have here, we can discern what the actual elements of the crime are, or what the government has to prove in bringing this case against Mr. Trump. And those elements are, first, that he had unauthorized possession of. Now, this is why they spent so much time talking about the National Archives and what the National Archives piece of this was. It was the National Archives that essentially blew the whistle that he had documents that he shouldn't have, that really should have belonged to his presidential library. And that's what got the FBI interested, and apparently, according to them, they just stumbled on to this national defense information. Any document. So, again, he didn't have a lot of other things, but he did definitely have a bunch of documents relating to the national defense. So this is a fairly broad category here relating to the national defense. I think that'll be relatively easy to prove. Which information possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States. Well, again, very, very, very broad language here. It makes it very easy. You don't have to prove that it's a significant injury. You only have to prove that it is an injury to the United States. And then willfully communicates, delivers or transmits, or attempts to deliver or transmit. Well, they're guilty of a crime under this title and can be imprisoned for not more than 10 years or both. So those are the elements of the federal crime with which Donald Trump is charged. And they all link together with the National Archives piece of this and the classified information piece of this. Because any document that is classified, I think it is reasonable to assume that based on the way things are done, that that is a document that relates to national defense. And I also believe that it's fairly easy to show that it could be used to the injury of the United States. And willfully communicates, delivers, transmits. Again, that is, there is evidence, or I should say there is an allegation in the indictment that he communicated some of these things to one of the people who was writing a book, might have even been a book about him. And as a result, he transmitted that information or communicated it at the very least. As a result, he communicated or transmitted that information at the very least. Now, as I've said on here before, these are very serious charges. When you have classified information in your possession and other people know that you have this classified information in the possession, and it's obvious that his former Navy valet, he obviously knew that he had this classified information because he was helping him move it. The temptation to look at stuff that you just want to know because you're curious, and you think, well, what can it hurt? You know, if I know it, I'm not going to talk about it because I know better than that. But the bottom line is that there are some stories that are just too good not to tell. And unfortunately, that is the reason why information has to be compartmented. It has to be secured. And only the authorized people who are actually working on something that involves that information, should be the ones who actually look at that information. And the idea that in this particular case, Trump just left these in boxes is really kind of scary. Now, whether he willfully transmitted, whether he knew or understood what was going on, that's all going to be for a jury to decide. And I have a great deal of sympathy for President Trump with respect to some of these other cases. But I do believe that there is, at least on paper, there's merit to this case. Now, you have to assume that the FBI is not going to, or the Department of Justice is not going to plead something that they can't prove. If they can prove this, I think he has a really strong chance of being convicted. even if a jury might be very sympathetic to him. Now, I don't know what his defense is other than that of vindictive prosecution. And there is some evidence that that's the case, that people, generally speaking, who are high enough up in government don't get prosecuted for retaining or not protecting classified information. If you look at what happened to Secretary of State Clinton, she had a lot of information on her server. Her server had been accessed by foreign sources. That wasn't intentional. It wasn't willful on her part. She didn't send, the KGB a note and say, hey, here's the address, here's the HTTP address to my server. But there still was a compromise of information that was on that server. And I think that was serious. It wasn't prosecuted. We had Joe Biden with documents in a number of different places, and he did not have authorization to retain and have possession of those documents. And he shared that information with a ghostwriter as well. So again, the idea that you would let the sitting president off because of essentially an inability to have him help in his own defense. There was some question about his mental acuity. Again, that's not an issue for me to decide. That's merely the allegation that's been made. It does set up the situation where there is a credible claim that this is a vindictive prosecution. Now, just as I am a First Amendment absolutist, believing that the First Amendment should be extended as far as possible, I'm also a classified information absolutist, because information that may appear to be unimportant in a document, there was a yellow pipe sticking out of the ground where this incident occurred. Even something as minor as that can lead to the discovery of the agent or the agent in place who communicated that information back to the United States, and it can lead to their, being killed by a foreign government. So these kinds of things are not, classified documents are not the kind of thing that you want to just leave laying around. And the idea that you would willfully communicate this to someone who had absolutely no authorization and absolutely no need to know this. And again, when we talked about classified information, we talked about a need to know. You have to have a need to know, and the need has to be related to national security, not to putting together a book on a particular subject. It's an entirely different kettle of fish. You may have a want to know, but you do not have an official need to know that information. So all of these are very serious, and I don't envy the lawyers who are defending him in this case, because if they get somebody like me on the jury who has worked with classified information when he was in the military and who was told, if you stick one of these forms in your pocket and accidentally carry it out of the secure area, you're going to spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth. Well, we believe that standard should apply up the line as much as it applies down the line. So there are some real significant issues in that regard with all of the classified information that's at issue in this case. We'll have to see how it goes. I make no judgment about whether Mr. Trump is guilty or innocent. I make no judgment about whether any of the defenses are meritorious. We'll just have to wait and see what shakes out over time. That's what I have for you today. I appreciate you being here. I hope I have not betrayed any bias in favor or against any of these people who are involved in this case, and I take no position on the government's merit of the merit of the government's allegations here. That is for a jury to decide, assuming that Judge Cannon lets this case go to trial. I think a lot of what goes on at the trial will really determine ultimately whether there is a conviction or not. But as I look at the elements of the crime, all of these things I believe are probably provable, except the real issue is going to be whether he willfully did this or whether he just negligently did this. And that may ultimately come down to being the deciding fact in that prosecution. If you have any comments about this or any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to address anything that you would like to have discussed. If at all possible, I want to try and stay away from political issues on the channel. I'm only doing this video because somebody asked me to look at the classified documents case. And so I have tried very hard to not make it a political screed, and I hope that folks understand and appreciate that. So that's what I have for you today. Again, thank you for being here. If you have an opportunity today, go out of your way, do something nice for somebody, and then come back tomorrow and catch me down here at the beach, and maybe we'll do something else nice. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.